When you gave me your keys, did that mean like I can come to your place whenever? I don't think so.
If you were going to go and check my phone looking for something, that would be a huge problem. But the problem there then is not that you have my password.
No. If I ever felt like I need to come and check your phone, we need to address why I have that need.
Yes.
Like, what did you do or what's going on with me that I'm having this need to check your phone? Going further from phone is like, should couples share bank passwords?
You may actually have very, very different relationships with money. And if you do have very different relationships with money, then separation of accounts, at least to a certain extent, I think is key. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Interracial Podcast.
Wait, it's not all black and white. My name is Cera, I'm black.
I'm Matthew, I'm white, and today we are talking about an issue that is definitely not all black and white.
Correct. What's the issue?
The issue is, should we share passwords to our computer, our cell phone, aka our other brain? The most incriminating piece of evidence you might have if you do something you shouldn't do, but also the tool you use to communicate with everybody sort of outside your immediate physical presence.
Yeah. What I think that I should, that if you're in a healthy relationship, you should have your partner's password.
Now, I want to talk about the language of that.
Yeah.
Because I don't disagree, but with that language, I also don't agree. Because I don't think it's a should have. I think it's that if in a healthy relationship that is truly full of trust, having it shouldn't be an issue. So me asking for it, like, why would I ask for it? Why do I have the password to your phone?
I don't know. You wanted, at some point in our dating relationship, you wanted to check, I don't know, maps, use my phone because it was the phone that was closest to you. Like, it was just there.
Right.
And so you needed to use it. I don't know, your phone was dead. But I feel like if we live in the same house, like, and your phone is just there, I should be able to use it.
What's the weather? I should be able to find out the weather without being like, oh, where's my phone?
And so I think that this is actually how I have the password to your phone was like, I would want to check something. I don't think I ever asked for it, but I would be like, hey, can you put in the password? And you never asked for it. I don't think I did, but it just became so annoying that I was asking you to open your phone all the time. And you were like, okay, just learn my password.
Yeah. And then when you couldn't manage to remember the password.
I do not remember any passwords. I don't even know your phone number. So at some point we were like, can we just have the same password? Do you remember that?
Oh, that's right. So we made the same password. And then when we got new phones, we didn't. And you couldn't remember my new password because I went back to the one that I used before. So then I just said, just give me your thumb and I'm going to put my thumbprint because I don't want to have to do it.
Yeah. So now I never come to you with like, can I access your phone? But I think the bigger problem that I think people are struggling with, issue is not like that I know your password and I can use your phone. I think it's like, what do I use your phone for? So if I'm going to your phone, rather than like maybe checking Google, but I'm going to your phone looking for something, then that is actually, I think, the problem that people have. That's
right.
The issue,
Yeah. And that to me was like, if you were going to go and check my phone looking for something, that would be a huge problem. But the problem there then is not that you have my password.
No.
The problem is then something much more fundamental, which is either I have done something that seems to have breached your trust, or you simply don't trust me for some reason. And therefore that is the issue, not whether or not you have my password or I have yours.
Yeah. So if I was like, just because I know your password doesn't mean like I should be reading your messages.
Right.
Doesn't mean I should be reading your emails, you know?
But there would be one thing, like let's say that I was communicating with my brother about a time we were going to meet.
Yeah.
And I'm taking a shower and you're like, oh, or whatever, I'm out, I don't even know why that issue would ever possibly come up. But as an example, if you're like, wait, I know he was texting with his brother, I need to go figure something out. Like if you went and checked that, generally, actually there's nothing that I would hide from you, but I can also understand, I 100% understand why some people would be like, I talked to my brother about things that are difficult. Like my brother and I are fairly open. So Like I might talk to him about a challenge we're having. I went over to his house the other day and I was like, oh, I did something really stupid. Sarah's having a really bad day. And I tried to like prove a point and it was ridiculous. So like, and it was really funny. I went over, I was like, yeah, we were having a little struggle today. And he's like, well, is that for something specific or is it just that you're a man and she's a woman? I was like, that's a really good question. I think it's a little bit of both. But that conversation, had we been having that over text, in almost any relationship I know of, that would not have been a text conversation you would have wanted to read.
No.
Because I had to process something about my mistakes in our relationship and also something that I don't think do very well, So my mistakes, your mistakes collide. I'm talking about it. And that's an easy one for you to say, oh yeah, well, you did this. And now you reading that message could have been not good for our relationship.
No, it would not have been good. And I think that's the key there is just because that I have your password doesn't mean I should be reading your messages without asking. I think before, unless your phone is there and the message comes in, then I get to see it.
Right.
That's okay. But for me to go in and use your password and start reading your messages with your brother or friends, that's a problem.
Yes. So here would have been another way of doing that. I'm taking a shower. There's some information on my phone and a text with my brother. You're like, what's the address of this place we're going so I can see how long it's going to take to get there? And I can say, I don't know. My brother texted it to me. Go check. And then thank goodness you have my password because I'm in the shower and I'm wet and I can't deal with it. And you can.
Oh, I need to respond to one of our friends, a conversation that's going and your phone is there. I can be like, babe, I've done that before.
Yeah. I can't find my phone.
I can't find my phone. So can I use your phone to text a friend?
Right.
And we have pretty much the same friends. The other thing I was going to bring up is you are in men's group and you are having a conversation about something that we were struggling about on the men's group in the other room. And I had you and I was like, next time we do a men's group, can you do it somewhere else? Because I just want you to know that I can hear you.
Right. And you even said, I want you to have that conversation. I don't want to hear it.
I don't want you to hear you talking in the men's group about, the struggles that we are having or something that you're dealing with. I want you to know that you have the privacy that you need. I don't need to hear all that.
And for anyone who's listening that's been on any of my men's group, I always have earbuds in, so you only get to hear my story.
Correct.
Else's.
Yeah.
And but we're actually going to move that to make sure now also that we have that space, because I think one of the objections, and we can go into this in a minute, that some people brought up on this Facebook thread, I'm having conversations with my girlfriends or whatever. Mostly it was women who said that. I'm having these conversations with my girlfriends and it's personal to their lives. And I don't want my partner to know what my friend is going through. It's not my partner's business, and that's private. And I want to respect their privacy. So when my partner has access to my phone, that also means they have access to someone else's privacy. And that gets a little bit dicey if, and only if, that trust isn't there with the password. Because once again, I know that generally you are not going to go snooping around my phone.
No.
That idea would literally, until we start talking about this, it would never, ever, ever have occurred to me that you would snoop in my phone.
And when I saw that, I was like, wait, for me to be snooping around your phone and reading your messages, one of the questions was is my life that boring that I am reading your text messages? I would rather call my friends rather than reading messages between you and your friends. I have so many friends to call. I would rather be working on my business.
Yeah.
It almost feels like gossip at that point. It's so unproductive.
It does feel like you're right. It becomes it's a way of participating in gossip almost, of what's going on that I can know about this other person that I can then maybe share behind their back, whatever. It's really weird.
Yeah, I just don't, there is nowhere in my life where I want to participate in gossip. It feels like a waste of time, so.
It's funny. I had someone say to me once what I thought was brilliant. And this was a teenager, by the way. It was I actually don't mind if people talk behind my back. I don't care. You can say whatever you want behind my back. If you're nice to my face, that's fine. And I was like, that's kind of really profound, actually. For a teenager to say that was amazing.
I think it's like, I actually think that is really amazing. I think the person talking behind the back is like, I don't want to be that person. Like, that's not how I want to spend my time.
And somehow going and so that's why I was saying this thing with the language and vocabulary. If you use this, like my phone, for something that you would feel ashamed to tell me or tell anyone about, then it's a problem. And if it's something that you're like, oh yeah, I did that, and there was no issue, then it's no issue.
Yeah. And so, so I'm just going to kind of like read some of what people were saying on the thread. One woman said, "No fucking way. I've been married to my husband for 25 years and never we look or want to look at each other's phone, email or Facebook. Ridiculous. It's private."
I think there's two sides of that. One is that we would never do that because it's private. That to me, that part of that's weird to me, because what kind of privacy in a marriage? Like, we're all up in each other's stuff. I mean, we make love. Where's the privacy in that? But the other part of that I think that what I'm sensing is that she's saying, no way, we have so much trust in our relationship and in our marriage that we would never need. And to me, like, that's fascinating, because I don't actually necessarily need your password for anything other than, like, maybe my computer is in the other room and I want to look something up real quick and your laptop's right there. Or you're like, hey, can you help me with this thing that we're working on? Or we're saying,
oh, there's another thing which is gonna be like funny. But when we both go to the bathroom, we take our phones. And sometimes I'm charging my phone and it's like not close. And I'm like, babe, can I use your phone? Can I use your phone?
So letting your partner take your phone to the bathroom, want to talk about intimacy? My phone is going places. When she's doing that type of bathroom business, and I don't want to go in there, but my phone is allowed to go.
Because I'm just like, I want to be like, check. And like, there was a time where you were like, oh my God, like your Facebook is so different from mine. Remember that?
Right,
because...
Oh, because I went.
You went to poop.
You left your phone in the bathroom, and I'm like sitting there. Let's go. Like, I have nothing to do, and I need to. It's just a thing. I like to read on the pot, and I don't even think I noticed it was. No, I didn't know it was your phone. I'm trying to remember, because I remember, like, I wouldn't necessarily go on your Facebook. That would be mostly weird. But I picked it up, and I was just like, It was actually, I'm so glad I did, because first of all, slightly different subject, but mind blown how much different two people that have a lot of the same friends in common, our Facebook feeds are
different.
So different. I was like,
yeah, because
you live in a different universe than I do.
We get marketed to, I'm a woman, like I get marketed different than you get marketed to.
A white man getting marketed to on Facebook and a black woman getting marketed to on Facebook.
Very different.
Totally different. And then we also have, like, because you actually also have a lot of friends from college, so you've got sort of millennials and Gen Z more on your Facebook feed, and I'm like, this is what people are talking about, and it just also made me realize, like, no wonder people don't get along, because they're thinking, I've seen all this is my reality, this is what I saw on Facebook, but what you see on Facebook and what I see on Facebook is totally different.
Yeah. So after you say that, I was curious, and I was like on your phone, and I was like, babe, can I check your Facebook? And I was checking your Facebook, and it looked like a different planet.
Totally different universe.
It's so different. So anyway, like, I just feel like, I don't know, we're in relationship. Like, we should be able to do that kind of thing, like with each other's phones.
Again, right? It's the purpose, it's the attitude, it's the energy behind it. If there is, if I was looking at your Facebook to see, like, with any amount of lack of trust, then we have a major issue that actually has nothing to do with passwords.
Yeah. If you're like going like, who has texted Sarah? Who is she texting? Who's, like, what kind of conversation is she having? At that point, it's like, no, that's the problem.
Right. Because somebody else also on that thread pointed out, you know what? If you really want to hide messages or emails from your partner, it's not hard to do. Like, there are ways. And in fact, years ago, I remember I was waiting in line somewhere and I picked up a Maxim magazine. And one of the things was this woman who was, I think she was like a porn star or something. And she was like, and it was obviously like a men's magazine, Maxim. And she was like, guys, statistics show that women cheat just about as much as men do, but women don't get caught. because we're smart and here are all the things that we do so that we don't get caught, because you guys are idiots and you get caught. And I think that was kind of like a little bit just to that point of, if you want to hide something, you can. And that has nothing to do with passwords. That has to do with fundamental trust.
Yeah.